Back in 2019, when I was 25, I lived in a flat in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I always went to see my family and pals in Jefferson on the weekends. One evening after hanging out with a buddy in Jefferson, I started my drive back to Milwaukee. It was close to 12 at night, and I didn't want to be too tired by the time I got home. However, the fog became super thick near Johnson Creek. It was so bad that I couldn't see even one car ahead of me. I didn't want to use the big road back to Milwaukee because of this, but I also didn't want to turn back. So I thought of stopping at a 24-hour place where truck drivers eat. It's called Pine Gown. I went inside hoping to grab a bite, look at my phone, and wait for the fog to clear. There weren't many cars around, so I parked right near the entrance. I think this spot saved me later. Inside, it was just like any other night. I got some food, played on my phone, and tried not to sleep. Now and then, I'd look outside to see if the fog was going away. It was still very thick. A few truck drivers came in and out, ate their meals, and then went back to their big trucks to sleep. Everything seemed quiet. Around 4 a.m, I was too sleepy to stay up. I thought of going back to Jefferson and resting at my parents' place until the weather got better. Being super sleepy, I wasn't really looking around when I walked to my car. I just wanted to get inside and drive. My car was right next to the entrance, so I got in quickly. Suddenly, a woman knocked on my window. I opened it a little, thinking she might ask for some coins or something. But instead, she looked worried and said she needed help. She began to tell me about how she and her man were driving around, and there was this white van that wouldn't stop following them. I remember a strange thing that happened at the Pinecone truck stop. This woman came up to my car window. She seemed super worried. She told me she had parked her car at Pinecone too. And guess what? There was a weird van parked right beside her car. That same van had been following her around. Now she was asking me to walk her to her car because she was scared. Before I tell you what happened next, I need to describe this woman a bit. She was pretty skinny, but one thing stood out. She had a big belly because she was going to have a baby soon. But her voice? It didn't sound scared at all. It was like she was reading from a book or something. Her big eyes, though, kept staring at me. It felt super weird. Now, I gotta tell you something about me. When I'm really sleepy, I can sometimes be a bit snappy. And I was super sleepy then. I started thinking about what she said. Firstly, where was her husband? Why wasn't he helping her? Secondly, why would she get out of her car if she was being followed by this van? Thirdly, why did she think I, a short 25-year-old girl, could do much? Lastly, if she was really scared, why didn't she just call the police? I told her, "Look, I can't help. Why don't you ask the Pinecone staff or your husband?" She just looked at me for a bit, not saying anything. Then she said okay and walked off. I drove away and made it home safely. My parents were still awake. I had told them I was coming home because of the thick fog. They always get worried if they don't know where I am. I shared the whole weird story with them. We thought about it and figured Pinecone could be a spot where bad things happen because it's open all the time and right by the big road. The place I sat in had big windows. Maybe someone was watching me. If there wasn't so much fog and it wasn't so dark, maybe I could have seen them. Maybe they hoped I had parked farther away so the woman could trick me while walking to my car. I was really lucky that night. I eventually went back to my Milwaukee flat, but I promised myself I wouldn't go to Pinecone alone during the night again. Whenever I go out by myself, I always make sure to glance behind me. By the way, I'm a 22-year-old woman. This memory takes me back almost a decade. I'm from Ohio, and in our small town there are stories about people being taken against their will. So when I was around 11, I was spending time at my Grandma Lucy's home, and I was with my 2 kid brothers. My baby brother, Sam, was just a toddler at the age of 1, and my other brother, Jake, was 9. Jake and I loved riding our bicycles everywhere in town. We'd explore every street and alley we could find. Grandma Lucy always told us to pop in from time to let her know we were okay. She's a sweet old lady, but honestly, she wasn't the strictest babysitter. More often than not, Jake and I would go on our little adventures without giving her a full idea of our whereabouts. On this particular day, Jake and I were goofing around in a parking lot about a mile away from where Grandma Lucy lived. We loved pretending we were driving real cars, so we'd park our bikes in empty parking spots. While we were there, we saw a distinct green van. The man inside gave us a friendly wave. We didn't think much of it, and after a while we went back to Grandma Lucy's place for a quick snack. After our snack, I wanted to continue riding, but Jake wanted to stay in. I felt brave enough, so I went out on my own. I passed by the same parking lot, and to my surprise, the green van was still parked there. I found it a bit odd, but I kept going. As the sky began to dim, my stomach reminded me it was almost dinner time. So, I began heading back to Grandma Lucy's house. As I passed the same parking lot, I saw the familiar green van. It was still there, and I started to feel a bit uneasy. Then I heard the hum of an engine from behind me. I moved closer to the sidewalk, thinking the car wanted to pass. To my shock, it was the green van. The man honked, which I first thought was a sign for me to move further. When I reached a crossroad, I stopped, thinking he'd drive past. But he didn't. He stopped too and gestured for me to come closer. A sinking feeling took over me. Thanks to my dad, who was a cop, I was always taught about stranger danger. The stories of people being taken away were fresh in my mind. Without wasting a second, I pedaled as fast as my legs could carry me. I zigzagged through various side streets, making sure he wouldn't guess which way I was headed home. Every time I went out, my parents told me, "If someone's following you, go into someone's driveway. It'll usually make them leave." Almost at my Grandma Lucy's place, fear gripped me. I didn't want that man to know where I lived, so I quickly turned into a random driveway just a street away. I wanted to get off my bike and maybe knock on the door of that house for help. But then, the green van followed me right into that driveway. The man tried to get out of the vehicle. Panicking, I rode my bike right across their lawn, through their backyard, and managed to get back onto the road. I pedaled as fast as I could towards Grandma Lucy's home. He was right on my tail again. Finally, reaching Grandma Lucy's driveway, I abandoned my bike and dashed to the front door. Peeping through the door, I saw the van enter the driveway, then quickly reverse and leave. But he circled the block a few times before disappearing. I don't know why, but I never told Grandma Lucy or Grandpa Joe about it. I just went inside, quietly had my dinner, and kept replaying the scary event in my mind, wondering what might have happened. The following day, Jake, Sam, and I were drawing on the driveway with chalk. Suddenly, I heard a familiar honk. Looking up, it was that eerie green van again. He kept driving by. Feeling alarmed, I ushered my brothers inside and we just sat in front of the TV for the rest of the day, trying to feel normal. Luckily, after that day, I never saw the van again. Fast forward to now, I'm about to turn 23 this weekend. I have a family of my own, a loving husband and a beautiful baby. Given the scary events I've lived through, I know I'm going to be super protective of my child. I always whisper a thank you to the skies for watching over me that day. I'm just so grateful I came out of it safe. In 2000 or 2001, when I was around 19 or 20 years old, I stayed in a big block of flats with my dad and my brother. We all had our own lives, doing our own things. My mom was also living in the same group of buildings, but she was way over on the other side. She had a friend, Jane, living with her, and they shared their space together. To get to my mom's place, I'd have to walk for about 10 minutes. It was quite a distance, but not too bad. One evening it was quite late, maybe around 11:30 p.m. or midnight. My mom thought it would be a good idea to wash her clothes. She was all by herself in the closest laundry area, and she felt a bit lonely and uneasy. So she rang me up on my phone and asked, "Hey, can you come over and sit with me? It's really dark and I don't want to be all alone here." Being a good son, I said, "Sure, Mom," and began my walk to where she was. The night was chillier than I thought. After a few minutes sitting with her and feeling the cold breeze, I told my mom that I'd head back to my place to grab a warm sweater. I started my walk back. As I was walking, I spotted someone. There was a fenced swimming pool on my right, and this person was walking on the other side of it. We were moving at about the same speed, but I couldn't make out any details of their clothes or face, just that they were there. Now, our building had a lot of residents, and it wasn't too strange for someone to be walking around, even late at night. Maybe they were returning from a friend's place or heading out somewhere. Still, it's always good to be cautious, right? Once we were past the swimming pool area, our paths met. The person, who now looked like a man of average size and height, turned my way and began walking in the same direction as me. This got me a bit nervous. I increased my pace. Soon, I reached a spot where the path split. I chose to go right, thinking of reaching my home as quickly as possible. My heart raced as I realized that I was just a few steps away from my place. I took a quick peek over my shoulder. He was still there, following me. And what's more, when I turned right, he did too. He was definitely closer now. Panic surged within me. I started to jog. In no time, I was at my apartment door, fumbling for my keys. I didn't see him pass by. Maybe he took another path or went into another flat or just disappeared. My heart was drumming in my ears, but I kept thinking, it's probably just someone from the building going home or maybe heading to a night shift at their job. I hurried inside and told my brother, "Hey, can you peek out the window? See if there's someone out there." I quickly explained the weird situation to him, about the guy who might have been tailing me. He stepped outside, looked around for a bit, then returned, shaking his head. "There's no one there," he said. Phew. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Maybe it was just someone from the building like I thought, I murmured to myself. But still, I had to go back to Mom, who was still at the laundry room. Now, looking back, I should have asked my brother to come with me, because halfway to the laundry room, by that same swimming pool, there he was again, the shadowy figure. It felt like my heart jumped to my throat. Is it the same person or a different one? Am I making this up in my head, or is this really happening? Without waiting any longer, I decided to not go past the pool again. Instead, I took a right, darting behind some nearby flats, trying to find a quicker route to reach my mom. I sprinted, dodging trees and bushes, trying to make my journey shorter. After a short run, I found myself back on another path, thinking I'd lost him. But as I turned a corner, there he was. All I could make out was a tall silhouette, wearing dark clothes with no face visible. Fear gripped me, and my legs started moving on their own. I ran. I dared to glance back, and to my horror, saw him chasing after me. Thankfully, the laundry room was in sight. I shouted out to my mom, desperate for her to hear me. As I neared her, only a few steps away from safety, the shadowy man was right behind me. He shoved me hard, sending me tumbling to the ground. But instead of doing anything more, he sprinted away, vanishing into the night. My mom rushed to my side, and I spilled out everything. We quickly finished up the laundry, and my brother came to accompany us. We went to my mom's place first and then walked back to ours. That night remains one of the scariest moments I've ever experienced. I still shudder when I think about it, grateful for my instincts that night. You see, I lived in a large, secure complex in Orange County, California. It's known to be a safe place. I've stayed there at 2 different times in my life, totaling around 5 or 6 years. I had never heard of anyone being harassed or followed there before. I'm just thankful I made it out okay that night.